Lebanon, Tennessee looks like any other small southern town, but ask the locals, the ones that have been there for a while. They're going to tell you something's not quite right. Something is really not quite right. And tonight, we're going to explore exactly what it is about Lebanon, Tennessee that is a little unusual. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my guest tonight, Michael, who is going to give us a little insight from local perspective.
You got a pull up? Cool.
Hey, how are
Oh,
you?
sorry. Hey, sorry, technical difficulties. How you doing, Daniel?
I'm doing great, and technical difficulties are fine. I mean, where we're at, we're just going to have technical difficulties. It just happens.
Hey, I'm working on a $30 tripod and a hope and a dream. So I was
Dude,
recording off my back patio earlier with the roosters.
that's literally what my world is usually, a hope and a dream and some interesting equipment issues. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, and Pamela just said we can't see Daniel.
You can't see me?
Yeah, apparently we can't see you. We're getting some feedback from the audience. While you're working on that, yeah. So Lebanon, I appreciate the bio. It may be a little bit misleading. Lebanon is a smaller town, but those who are in Lebanon, it's just so chock full of people nowadays, right? So I mean, it really is. I mean, in the last few decades, it has gone from the small town like vibe where you had more farmers, you had more farms. It was more of a cultural, agricultural town, and then more recently with just everything going on in the world, everybody's moved to the south, and Lebanon has grown with the greater Nashville area. And so
We still can't see Daniel.
okay, so we're still working on Daniel. So it's grown, and part of the factor in that is there's a lot of disturbance of a lot of lands that have not been disturbed for a long time. When your farmers and your agricultural settlers come in, normally they live off the land and work with the land. But when you have such great big booms of populations of people coming in, and that comes with development, that comes with just changing the landscape, that comes with digging, that comes with using explosives to break the bedrock in the ground. And not only that, it just comes with a heightened sense of residual energy in the air everywhere. So it's really seemed to the weirdness has taken a hike recently with the introduction of more people in the area, which of course could be a factor, right? There's a million different ways to look at that, but Lebanon is kind of a special little place in itself. It has its own history. We do have some local some local state parks within an hour drive in any direction. One of which, of course, we'll get to. I have someone who gave me the story of their eyewitness encounter. I wasn't even really looking for it. We just so happened to get to talking about it. But yeah, as far as that, I mean, now it's like you can just about know what time to go walking at night just to see anything, to see some lights in the sky. And you're like, well, what could those be? Are those drones? Are they doing more operations off the airstrip over here? There is the aeronautics college here in Lebanon, but it's like when you see lights in the sky at night, for instance, you just don't know. And that's the biggest thing, is what you don't know. So there's a lot of what I would call don't knows, going on around in Lebanon. And a lot of it is normal. Some of it may be paranormal. Some of it may be supernatural. I couldn't tell you, to be sure. The one thing I have come to realize, is probably, my make or break. Either I'm sane or crazy or a little bit of both. But once you realize that everything is real, even the real fake stuff, that's when you start to look at stuff differently. You start to see things you didn't see before, and you're like, is anybody else? I can't tell anybody about this. You know what I mean? And then that's why I guess we have podcasts like this, huh?
Right. So good deal. Okay, now they're seeing me. Hey, got to show up sometime, right? Because it's my show.
Fashionably, huh?
Right. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I just kind of want to throw this in there because I drive through that area coming home and going to East Tennessee for work frequently. And one of the things that I have noticed is that there's that area before you reach 840, the exit for 840, and before you reach the two exits prior to that, there's that area of what I call absolute just jackery, where time doesn't seem to work right.
So you're talking
Space
about going
is
down 40 and you're talking about coming out of the last exit from Lebanon towards 840?
Yeah, heading
Okay, so yeah,
like
you're talking, yeah, from the for the local, the South Hartman exit strip to the 840. You're talking about it's all swampland and bogged out and just
right. And it even starts as far back as Carthage in that area where it starts getting funky. And
Okay,
the
yeah.
closer you get into Lebanon, the stranger it feels to me, like the energy, the density, you know what I'm saying? It feels it starts getting more and more dense. And then there's that moment where all of a sudden I am not where I'm supposed to be anymore. And that's happened at least 2 or 3 times. Like I wound up completely different place from where I was heading to. So what is it about what's going on there? Do you guys find that to be a problem? Do you find it to be an ongoing issue?
I go far deep into every aspect, right? I'll find an explanation for anything, and it can be any explanation, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be supernatural, but also it could be supernatural. So like when you go through these areas that have been undeveloped and you find these pockets, right? You got to think like with the overdevelopment of everything, right? So first off, think of it like this: your waterways, your creeks, and your streams are natural highways for natural things. All kinds of animals follow those, right? So then you have your marshy lands. Your lands are filled up with water, like you were talking about along 40, and then what else is left for anything to be anywhere, right? So I'm not discounting the fact that you might feel the presence. You might feel the presence. As a matter of fact, I believe in that. I believe you do. I believe part of becoming aware of your getting to know yourself is getting to know your own sensitivities, right? So there is untold history that has been sitting dormant under these bogs, under all of this land that we now live on top of. And this area is also known to have been occupied for times past by different, I'll say, civilizations, right? Because you have the Sellers Mound State Archaeological Site, which is a known site. And if you have any fun with LiDAR, you can go online and find public LiDAR, where you can go and see depressions in the ground, and you can actually see the Sellers Mounds, and you can see the burial mounds, and you can see the difference in the land, right? But the Sellers Mounds is just one small part, and we know that they had stockades there. They built a wall, they had a town. So that just proves that there were so many people who were able to live there. Where else did they live? How much of how much of Lebanon in this area was actually once occupied by other people? That's what I want to know. You want to get into spooky ghost stories, there's no one talks about it. There's not like an official registry list, but I'd love to know just how many people have had stuff going across their houses, in these new development areas. And it really does come with, there is were you talking about going down towards where did I go? Down to Sparta?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That was
yeah, yeah,
another one
yeah.
of those areas where you pass over the water, and water is a big thing for me, right? You pass over the
Mhm.
water. I went down through Sparta and it was dark. I couldn't see anything. But just based off of the residual feeling of driving through the area, I was like, oh, I know where I'm at. And then I looked on the map and I'm like, oh, this is where I'm at. And then that was also the same night that my left tail light, my left signals went out, my driver's side door would not open, my handle wouldn't work. And then I bought a trailer and then I got out of the area and everything started working again,
Mhm.
and it was like, just like you said, there's like pockets. It's like a little pocket dimension, and sometimes you do pass through and you get that feeling. You're like, what else is here? Especially, out at the mounds. If you go out there late at night, close to sunset, you're guaranteed to, have an encounter of some kind, have get a feeling. At least you will see something, because these
Yeah.
areas were populated. Who's to say that they're still not,
Right, right. And that area in particular, I believe Bruce Brown was the one who said that there was like the warrior path or the warrior trail through there.
Is it the Trail of Tears?
One
Oh, this is actually something called the warrior path. It was
football and down through it goes a long way.
Okay. No, I haven't heard of this. No, I'll actually, let's see. I'll look this up. I got my pad here just for this.
yeah, he sent me a map at one point of that, and it was quite interesting. Uh,
Let's see here. So,
so
I mean, Tennessee Warrior Path.
Now the
yeah,
trailers had branches to where it did come through Carthage and down through Old 70 from what I researched into Lebanon.
mhm.
They brought people down through there, and then we're like where we're sitting, Bluebird Road. We're just like a few miles from
Warrior's path.
highway right there.
Let's see. It's not pulling up.
Yeah,
So
Bruce is saying in chat that it's called the warrior's path.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, okay. So, I mean, I will share an experience I had. I was a bit reserved on actually sharing this just because, but it was my experience. I'm of sound mind enough to have a rational outlook on it. Could be real, could be not. I don't know. But the Sellers Mounds that we spoke about, right? I said that you're guaranteed to have you're guaranteed to have an encounter out there if you just go out there with an open mind and you just allow yourself to be sensitive to what you feel. I've been out there. My mother, we've always gone out there as kids and we've experienced things. We've taken other people out there with us and we've seen things. Most recently, I think it was the coolest. I was out there. It was right at dusk. It was right at dusk. So it was twilight, right when the sun was going down. And I was able to see, I'd gone on this walk and it was cool enough to where I could actually see like the water vapor evaporating off my skin.
Oh wow.
So it wasn't cold, but it was getting that, it was getting that time, and the moisture in the air was starting to set. So it was starting to get misty, but there was still enough light to be able to see my path. And as I'm walking up, I get to the top of this hill and I see these two cedar trees, and I just stop. And these two cedar trees are sitting right next to each other, way off in the distance. But I swear I see a pair of eyes in these cedar trees. But it's like, the eyes aren't in the cedar trees all the way across the field. They're right in front of me. It's just that I can see them because of the cedar trees behind them. So I took a second. I'm like, am I seeing this? And I tried not to see it. And I tried not to not see it. You know what I mean? I tried not to affect it. I just tried to observe. And what followed next was in the twilight, in the mist, just all around me, I start seeing these eyes, and it's like you can see through them, but you can see like an energy form. You can see these eyes in the twilight all around me, and I'm looking, and I'm like, there's taller ones, and there's older ones, and there's even an elder, and he's got like a staff and a headdress, and I don't know, I can't even like describe what I saw. I just know that I had all these figures around me, and it was right at the moment of twilight, and which is, of course, if you're going to see anything, when do you see anything, right? Right at dusk. So I was just in the moment, kind of taken aback, and again, still like, okay, I'm not crazy. We're experiencing this. This could be a real thing. And I just had this overwhelming feeling of community. I felt like I had all these hands on me. I felt just this warm, encompassing energy. And then this went on for like a minute. And then all of a sudden, it's like, I felt an energy. I felt a pressure. I felt a pull. And then I looked over towards like the big mound in the park. And it's like I saw a flash off in the woods, but it wasn't like a flash in the woods either. It was just, I don't know how to describe it. And it's like when I looked towards the woods in the big mound, I saw all of the ethereal eyes just kind of part, and they separated. And then I got the feeling that I was getting like ushered out. They were saying, okay, it's time to go. You need to go. So of course I stood there longer. And where I had just come walking up the path, there were frogs, there were tree frogs, there were bullfrogs, and they were all singing the whole time I walked along the path. Well, it wasn't 10 seconds after that feeling of, hey, you need to go, that we heard a stick break off in the woods. And then a minute later, all of the frogs and the crickets and everything fell dead silent right up the trail just where I had been. And so my dog and I promptly, exited the park because there's definitely something there. It could be deer, it could be this or that, but just the whole encompassing experience, one thing to the other, to try to like dissect it and to try to like, compartmentalize any one moment kind of discredits it. But when you have the whole experience, it's like, it's a magical journey, man. There's there's nothing, there's nothing to really describe it. It just is what it is,
And it's very interesting because like all of that, you mentioned cedar, and the cedars are pretty prolific in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because cedar is one of the things used for smudging and cleansing. It provides a spiritual shelter, enhanced meditation, fosters grounding, and it's also attributed to gaining wisdom. So there's a lot of magical properties, if you will, to cedar. And I find that very interesting. That is so like that area is just literally just inundated with cedar trees and various types of evergreen, of course. But it seems to me like there's definitely one of the things that rings to me about that area is that cedar is very spiritually cleansing. And so one of the things that I find interesting about that is the amount of reported activity in that area. Like, I mean, one of the closest documented sightings to me, it was from the town of Lebanon, and it happened out on the outskirts there. Two young kids, as a matter of fact, I think they were both maybe 12, boy and girl, during daylight hours, they were walking down the road, turned a corner, and boom, there they were, face to face with this thing that they described as being very tall, very hairy. It was covered with hair, not fur, but hair,
Mhm.
and dark,
What's the
long.
distinction there? What's the distinction between fur and hair?
Well, so when you're talking to kids, especially, like it they are going to describe exactly what they see. They're going to, whatever their perception of something is, that's how they're going to call it. So they specifically said that this thing had hair, and that's what they literally described it as. Now, a lot of people, when they describe something that appears to be an animal, they're going to use the word fur. But these two kids specifically said no, this was hair. And in the report, they were pretty on spot with their description. It ring very true to other people's descriptions of some of the local. Fur covers the body like a bear. Hair is stringingly revealing patches of skin. This is true, Randy. That's very true. That hair tends to cover the body, or have like the patches of skin to it instead of just covering the body like a thick blanket.
Right, that would paint the picture in my mind of like longer hair, longer, not so bushy. It's like more like mine, less like my dog's.
Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting.
And that was here in Lebanon. That was here.
Yeah. It's actually like on. It's on one of the Bigfoot websites that it was listed. So I found that very interesting. I'm trying
I
to
haven't heard
remember.
about this. And so,
Honestly,
like, how many reports do you get like this? How many reports in general do you get from this area? From
do I get? I
you,
don't.
you other friends, like just generally, how much do you hear? How much do you think is credible?
I like personally. I hear a lot of stories from locals um, about seeing what appears to be a cryptid of some type. Occasionally, I hear about UAPs, that kind of thing. Credible. You know what? I've stopped trying to second guess what somebody may be seeing and just go with what it is they're describing. Most of the time, I feel like that the majority of people that I talk to from the area, they know. I mean, they've been around for a while. They know, what they've seen. They know what.
Or maybe they don't, and that's the other thing. I mean, this kind of segues into the other story I told you about, but part of like the discernment in picking like a genuine story is if a dude has no idea what he saw, he's probably telling the truth. You know what I mean? But if he's like, "Oh, it was this," and he might be stretching it. He might have told the story a few times for his friends, and then you know how that evolves, right? But I guess would you like I can tell you the other story of the other encounter that I was told earlier this week. And again, we spoke. We'll protect the identity and location for various reasons, but I have it on fairly good authority. This is anecdotal, but it just so happens earlier this week, was at the bar drinking with a friend of mine, and well, he got drunk enough to tell us this story. And before I tell you the story, I'll preface it with this: we call him Wolf Boy. We call him Wolf Boy, so we'll just refer to Wolf Boy, okay? So Wolf Boy comes in and he gets drunk, and if he gets drunk enough, he wants to go wolf hunting out at the Cedars. Oh, well, he wants to go wolf hunting. And we're like, why do you always want to go wolf hunting? Well, he has this story that he was out at the park, and to be completely fair and objective about it, he was open and honest. What substances a person may be on in a traumatic situation can have any manner of effect or factor. As far as I'm aware, he was just had some to drink, had some alcohol, went for a walk in the woods. It got dark. It got dark while he's on the trail. He twists his ankle and falls, and he really can't. He's immobile now. The trail is dark, and he is now, of course, again, being analytical here, he's at this point, you're in a state of distress. You don't know what kind of adrenaline or what's going on in your brain, especially if you are inebriated. However, not to discount this man's story whatsoever, right? Because again, this is a genuine encounter, I believe, where he's not trying to tell me a story. He doesn't know what he saw. All he knows is that there were 3 beings, that approached him through the woods, and he described them as these wolf-like creatures with hair. Again, not fur, right? But with hair. And they approached him, and he says at this point, obviously, he's like, oh, terrified, he's scared, right? So again, you don't know what your mental state is, but he says that the one in the middle approaches him and starts to grunt to him, and it was like, oh, oh, oh. And he said it wasn't a growl. He was specific. He said it was like a grunt. It was like a communicative grunt. And what he was able to make out was this being was asking him if he was hurt. It was grunting, but it was saying hurt. And so, all in all, again, just like summarize, gets a little drunk, goes out for a walk in the woods at night, twists his ankle on the trail, gets approached by 3 intelligent beings with hair, look like wolves. One of them grunts to him and asks him if he is hurt. And from there, I don't really know where the story goes on. I believe I'll have to get more details, but he made it out. He is alive. He's not maimed. He said he didn't he did say that when it started to try to communicate with him, he didn't feel threatened. And so I believe they walked off, and he was able to get up and make his way out of the park. So now he's known as Wolf Boy because he wants to go find him again. And he's told me about it. And he's actually told me, I'll spare the details on this, but he has told me about a location with some interesting architecture in the vicinity of where this happened. And I have the wild hair enough to go out and check it out too. I don't know if we'll go out at midnight, but we'll go figure out, we'll go see what's going on, but I don't doubt it. As a matter of fact, I think it's more likely that they are real. I think it's more likely that everything is real, even the real fake stuff. I think it's more likely that, this sanitized, way of living that we have, where we've made it this far. We're so technologically advanced. Yeah, we dominate pretty much everything, but it's what lives in the cracks, I mean, you want to get spooked out enough, go look up videos of cougars just sneaking through the city. There's all kinds of security cameras where these 800-pound predators are just prowling the streets right behind people, but they don't attack anybody either, right? So they're just trying to survive. They're not trying to incite violence. That's not predatory behavior. So I think I believe his story is credible. I think it's credible. If I get more details on it, I'll give you more. If he'd like to come on and give his testimony, then maybe too. So, but
Absolutely,
that's here in this area,
Hey, do you remember when that big wolf being jumped over the truck? You were in junior high.
Yeah, I do remember that.
About 5, right out
Wow.
here.
All right. So she on the subject of wolf.
That was a crazy night right there.
I mean, it was. I mean, it's story time, right? So, I mean, this is a story from my childhood, and again, we've always seen things out here on the farm, and you just always know you saw something. That's really the best description of it. You saw something. You don't think, I'm pretty sure it's not what I've seen before, but we were coming up the driveway one night, and
You were in junior high.
I was in junior high, and
Daniel was in the cab in the back of the truck.
yeah, our little brother was with us, but we're coming up the driveway, and I just noticed movement on the left side, and it's dark, so all we have is our headlights, but the light spills over, so I noticed some movement, and the cows jump up, and so as I look left, I see something jump over the hood, and
He cleared the truck.
I see feet, I see a tail, and then
Jeez.
you kind of just hear a boom, but not really. You know what I mean? It's just, if the cows hadn't have jumped up, I'd have not thought anything about it. But when he jumped over the car and ran off into the field, the entire herd of cattle jumped up because they were like, what is that?
Wow.
And my mother, she said, she'll tell you, she says that she actually saw it because she was driving.
I saw him sitting down. I saw him sitting down at the corner fence post of the yard.
Wow.
On my side, on the driver's side. And then Michael was in the front. I was driving a S10 truck at the time and a little Ford Ranger King Cab. And I thought it was a cow at first because it was a darker color, black. But then when the headlights started hitting him, it looked like a big wolf creature. And I thought, why is that cow sitting down like that? That's not right, Well, then he stood up on all fours. He was on all fours. And then he stood straight up on his hind feet. And there were my family's got cattle out here. And they were all laying down over close to the driveway in the field over right next to the driveway.
Yeah, the cattle they like to lay on either side of the driveway. So this was all like in a small.
Yeah. He jumped. He took a big leap, cleared the truck. Thank God. Thank God he cleared the truck.
Of course he
jumped straight over the top of the truck. Michael saw him, and then he jumped over the top of the cows, several of them that were laying right there beside the driveway in the field. Of course, it was gangbusters at that point. They all jumped up and took off running. They were in a frenzy. And I stopped in the driveway. Of course, the kids were younger. Michael was in junior high. He was about maybe 13, 12. Daniel was about.
Well, I mean, but I was still old enough to rationally. Yeah.
We pulled on up the driveway, and I remember Michael was really freaked out. Daniel, thank goodness, as small as he was asleep in the back of the truck. But we sat out there in the driveway for about 45 minutes, and I shut the truck off, and we were looking for this thing, okay? Because we had to get out of the truck, had to get Daniel out of the truck. He was asleep, and make it from the driveway through the gate into the yard and up to the door to get in the house. So
I'm pretty sure I jumped over the fence. I just skipped the gate.
No, I got Daniel out of the back, and I got him in my arms, and Daniel was like, "Put me down, I can walk," and I was like, "No, you can't." I had him all cradled up, and You got out. We were just like 1, 2, 3 on count. You jumped out and ran and got the gate, and I had Daniel in my arms. we all took off running
Wow.
up to the door. So
I do remember as well a distinct detail, and it was the weirdest thing, but I swear on its tail, and I remember telling you this, you can verify this, and I even drew a picture of it the next day at school. I swear I saw on its tail like wrappings, like bandage wrappings, because that's what I saw. I caught its tail and I saw it jump over in the headlights and it lands in the field, and I saw its tail and I swear it was like it had a bandage wrapped around, and I could recreate it. You know, I could redraw it, but it was real enough,
Wow.
man. You know.
Wow. Brandy.
I went back out after that, after I got y'all settled in the house. I went back out on the porch, on the side porch off the kitchen. And of course that night I didn't leave the porch. Okay. So
Right.
but I was just looking out through there, and I had cut the carport lights on and stuff. Then I went back in there and cut them off because I thought that might not be smart to have the lights on. You know, you just show yourself right up there and around the house. But I looked out and I saw him run. I saw him come from. We've got a pond back here right behind the house. I saw him come down through there in the dark, and I know it was that wolf creature. Okay, because he was moving too fast and he was too big to be a cow. Okay,
So I seen it with my own eyes.
and he came back down through beside the house. And we used to have an old pear tree out there.
They used to love the pears.
Well, and we used to have an old pear tree out in the field.
We had one pear tree out in the field. And if you were out there at the right time in the twilight or the dusk, you could just about catch him out there grabbing a pear.
Well, that's where he went. The tornado got it in 2020 when the tornadoes came through here. But he went out there and lay down up under that pear tree. And I sat up on the porch and watched him for a little while. And that's where he went. He went out there. I'm assuming it was the same one, okay? But that he went out there and lay down under the pear tree.
Well, and you know, to bring it back around, you know a little bit about our property in this area, and our property is actually bordered by, you know, again, I mean, I don't want to give out too much because people like to go LARPing and searching.
Yeah.
Our property is downstream from the state park.
Okay.
And so the state park where you have the archaeological site and the mounds and all of this history. And again, you can have an encounter every time. And so what do we know about waterways? And man, those are your natural highways. A lot of things travel up and down. Not only do we have the creek that runs along our property for the greater half of the front, we also have a branch that goes and cuts through our property that goes off into some other fields, off behind some other houses down the road and the neighbors. And there's, again, you know, you sit out there long enough, you'll see a coyote, and you'll see a squirrel, you'll see a raccoon, you'll see all manner of things. I've been walking by the creek and made friends with a skunk one night, you know. I had to. But you know, I have been out where everything just gets quiet and you're like, well, there is something else out here. It's that presence, right? So maybe I would lend that to why we've had so many encounters out here and seen so many things, because we do have the waterfront of our property that is downstream from, you know, the site. So It's just kind of something we've lived with, and that's just what's on the ground. That's not even talking about what's in the sky. You know?
Right. Well, and that's very interesting too, because your mom has shared some photos with me before of some of the things uh, that you guys experience there with the blue lights. Um, I- I'm the
So
thing.
go ahead.
No, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Tell him about the one that comes through the bedroom in here and crawls down the wall while you've been in your sleep.
Oh, well, are we talking about the lights,
What?
like the blue lights in the sky, or
The little blue orb.
oh, the little? Oh, okay. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not crazy. It's just so much, you know. You got to like trickle through it. Which blue orb, which light, which time. You know. Man, they just pop up. They're just here. They're there. You see a white light here, or a red orb there, and they just pop up. And I find usually, I see them when I'm going down a certain thought path, but not necessarily a specific thought. More of like the emotional reaction to some thoughts,
Mhm.
and I've kind of sort of started to see a correlation to where if I'm feeling one type of way, I might see one type of orb, or if I'm feeling a different kind of way, it seems to kind of respond to my energy.
Mhm.
What it is, I don't know. It's a phenomenon. It could be in my vision, in my eye, it could be across the room. I don't know. But we've always seen these things, you know, but more tangibly, I'd say, I mean, if you go out at 3 o'clock, 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. anytime around my farm, you can see any manner of things crossing by the river. Or if you look up, I mean, I've seen lights in the sky that do things that don't make sense. But also, it's like with the advent of drones, and of course, we have the aeronautics college over here. You never know why at 3 a.m. you would see three dots in the sky making the shape of a triangle, you know, in a perfect triangle. And then they each round each of their corners, and then they all just disappear. Somebody could be playing with the drone program, you know, maybe if you're going to do it at 3 a.m., right? But also, I've seen on another occasion, same part of the sky, looking up, same time of the night, I've seen I want to say drones, but there were lights. That's all I could see. There were two lights, and they were approaching each other, and then they stopped, and then they went around each other in a perfect concentric circle. And when they met the place that each other were previously, they went off in opposite directions and then just floated off and dissipated, you know. And so, not to get too magical on this journey, that's also the same part of the sky. I did an experiment with a fair dosage amount of psilocybin and saw things in the sky that terrified me in that
Wow.
same sector of the sky. But you know, keep it what's the word, objective. I don't know how many followers take, you know, experiences under substances to heart. I don't know. You know, it's always weird when you're talking about, are you really seeing it? Can you discern? Like, I can discern the difference between the dots in the sky and the dots that pop up, you know,
Right.
so it's real enough. You know what I mean? Um, as far as orbs going through the house, I don't know. I don't know what you had.
I see. I don't know. I'm just I can't block it out. I see stuff all the time, and it might be subtle activity. You know, it might not be anything. Um, it's not opening doors. I have seen them open doors in here at times, but I see them shoot through the house. You know, I've been laying downstairs in the bed awake and trying to go to sleep, and I've seen orbs come through the windows, and not really bother me at times, but they just, I've seen them come through the windows or come through the door and come through the doorways and then make a trail and go out the bedroom door and go into the living room, you know. So
Wow. Yeah, you guys have had some very close calls and interesting experiences there with some of those. I understand for sure. Um,
tell them about that, the one that comes in here when you're in the bed
Lord, no.
and crawls down the wall.
All right,
Dagger.
we're not talking about. So what she's talking about is a recurring dream that we've all had, where it's this skinny, slender, gray figure.
uh,
What did we name him? Jeffrey?
No,
Gerald?
I'll think
Freaking,
I'll think of it in a minute. But we kind of nicknamed him.
freaking.
Okay. I'll think of it.
All right, so
Sorry.
Thomas is
No.
this.
Thomas is a child that passed
Okay,
away. in the
all right,
house.
not Thomas.
Okay.
All right, we'll pick Reginald. Reginald is this slim gray figure that pops up in our dreams.
No,
And
I've
it's-
seen him walk through the house.
He's,
It's not a dream.
you want me to go full wacko mode? He's like a transmorphic resonant being that is able to sort of change his vibrational frequencies to slip between this veil and the other. And he is a suckerer of energy, which is why he comes to your dreams and you have the nightmares, and then, you know. So
He's over here.
here's the thing. I've had more experiences as a child, and everybody always says the same thing, right? Well, when I was a child, I saw this, saw that, had imaginary friends. But then you grow up and you become an adult, you know, life, this and that. You literally learn to shut a lot of that out. I think a lot of people are disconnected from their own senses and feelings in a lot of ways, because it's just, I'm not trying to get heretical here, but it's just in the way we live, we don't embellish the sensitivities that we have. You know,
Right.
we don't really fully appreciate or even know what we are, what our capabilities completely are. You know, you want to know what I think? I think we're the most sophisticated antenna technology ever created. You know, look into read a little bit in antenna theory, find out the reason why we're all messed up. You know, from the Wi-Fi and living in this 5G frequency soup. You know, we're basically hard jelly walking around, right? So we are sensitive to any kind of frequency and any kind of energy. We just calcify ourselves and become desensitized over time. Doing a lot of breath work, when you get out of the Western world and the philosophy and you look into Eastern philosophy and you listen to people like Alan Watts and Carl Jung and so many others who have gone down, you know, the third eye mind rabbit hole, and you find out other cultures had completely different ways of living, like, you know, where breath work was a part of your lifestyle, your physical exercise, where, you know, you had specific stretches meant to allow you to basically return to baseline. You know, and this is where a lot of chronic diseases come from, believe it or not. You know, a lot of people have to get surgeries in their later years because they just never stretch. They're chronically tightened, and then over time, I knew a guy. He was a strong man, one of those guys, lifted weights all the time, didn't do the right recovery, and his muscles tightened so bad that his nerves wrapped around his spinal cord, and then he had to get surgery because they were like pinching the nerves, right? So this is an extreme example in all the wrong direction. But the point is, practicing this stuff and sort of returning to my inner child and doing emotional work and seeking, help and therapy. And really, you can seek all the help in the world, but until you can handle yourself, you're not going to be able to return to that, the mind,
Right.
body, spirit, the Trinity, all of that. But the more I continue to take into these practices of breath work, the more I continue to sort of see things like I used to as a child. I start to have some of the same experiences I had as a child. I start to see the orbs, and it's like things that I literally thought, oh, well, that was just, you know, I didn't really see a dog, man. It was a figment of my imagination as a child. And then I'm out here walking in the backfield and something goes running across the field that's doesn't look like anything else that I've seen. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just think if you really want to get to the bottom of things, you have to be able to step into their world. And we're so humanized, disconnected, we're so desensitized to it. And then you basically get socially castrated if you bring up any sort of sorry for the harsh terminology, but really if you try to even bring up the notion that there's anything outside of the accepted reticulated viewpoint, then you get ostracized, and so the truth never really comes out. And I think it comes from people wanting to be right over people wanting to find what's true. You know what I mean? So you can be right all day long about the wrong things. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I don't really know how to wrap it all up. I just know there really is no way to wrap it up. I love the name of your podcast, dude. It really is. It's a magical journey. I'm serious.
It's very true. And originally when I started the brand, I started it for a whole different reason. And when I started doing the paranormal podcast, I decided to go in and continue using the brand. And Austin Lawrence, who is with the Dead Chronicles, pegged it so right when he was like, you know what? Like, it's a perfect name for a paranormal podcast because this is a magical journey. And so that's kind of why it's stuck and why the brand is where it is at this point. One of the things that I've noticed about this area in general is that it is an area of just extreme concentrated high strangeness. I'm about 30 minutes away from you guys, and if you go like right down the street and make a right turn, you start going toward La Casas in that area, and back towards Sparta and all that, and just an amazing amount of again, more high strangeness. It just seems like there's this continuous buildup of energy. And I often wonder sometimes, is it because I know this area is all through here, known for things like moonstone. They have at the LBL, they used to mine for hematite and iron. There's a lot of
We have zinc mines around as well in Carthage and out towards our little state park out there where Wolf Boy got an encounter.
Right. There's a lot of heavy minerals around here, and that's one of the things that and I'm sure there's quite a bit of quartz here in this area too. I know once you get into Cumberland in that area, you start hitting quartz for sure. With all that said, this is
Yeah, we found a fair amount of quartz.
doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. This whole area, like, it feels like it's one big battery in a way, and that's kind of the feeling of density through here. A lot of times is what I feel like is part of that.
It's kind of interesting that you say that because you've touched on so not only do we have minerals, right? First off, it's like you think we'd be the only thing looking for minerals. Maybe there are other things out there,
Right.
Let's just let's get crazy with it. Maybe there are aliens who are like, I'm gonna go down here and get some quartz real quick. But it's like, in seriousness, there is an abundance of minerals, a variety of minerals. Not only that, we're on a limestone basin.
Mhm.
The resonance of different minerals and different stones and rocks. I don't know what the significance of that is. I just know that it is significant, and I think it's interesting they use the term battery because I mean, we've seen, you dip a toe into natural science. You learn
Mhm.
that, you put this rock in this water or this base or this solution, and then it lights up and it glows. How does the firefly light its ass on fire? You know what I mean? Like, how does
Right.
it do that? And then you don't get any bit past that. That's it. Then you can go into biology, you can go to dendrology, you can study trees, you can do anything. But into learning how things actually literally work with resonant frequencies and talking about cymatics and all those good little rabbit holes, I do wonder what I always wonder what was here before. And
Mhm.
I always wonder, what are we just sitting on top of?
Well,
And there are some things that I've seen out at the state park. And the funny thing is, Wolf Boy, right? He described the same thing the same way, in that there are features out there that look man-made, but they're natural.
Mhm.
And so, who knows how people built stuff for all time? You know what I mean? You take a dude from 300 years ago and you put him in an office building, he might have an aneurysm. You know what I mean? Like, there's no telling. You go to from the Romans, and then you go to, where I don't know where it's at. The Hindus, the Hindu temples, like
Mhm.
the absolute complexity, the matching, like how did they create such a complex thing that is right there? It's real, you can touch it, you know what I mean? It's literal proof of a time before when different people of different civilizations of different understandings with knowledge before us could do things we can't.
Mhm.
And so I think that's why I'll bring it up again. I think is a huge advantage is that we have public lidar. We have
Mhm.
Google. You can just you look it up on Facebook. There's all kinds of lidar aerial photography pages. Um, but yeah, man, people can just scour the land. People will find stuff in I think it was just in Switzerland, or was it Finland? They find old ruins all the time. They go through the Amazon. They're like, oh, there were entire cities. There were entire cities in the Amazon, right? So who's to say there weren't cities here that were knocked out by a giant flood so long ago? You know what I mean? Maybe there
Right.
are batteries. I think there is a lot to be discovered with natural sciences and how things resonate with each other in a sense, right?
Right. Well, and they're finding there's pyramids all over Tennessee, which really surprises people. But I'm not sure why that's surprising to people. But uh, I think um, Brian Jeffrey with Black Mass Paranormal, he's talked about the pyramids of Tennessee. Some of them in East Tennessee that they have.
Talking about the Bass Pro Shop.
Mm?
Talking about the Bass Pro Shop.
The Bass Pro Shop.
Down in Memphis.
Well, kind of,
I'm sorry, I
yeah.
didn't mean to cut you off. I was just joking. You don't know about the Bass Pro Shop?
No.
Yeah, they built a giant pyramid. I think it's down in Memphis, ain't it?
Is that?
yeah, they did. They did.
It's a giant pyramid.
Wow.
They just built one.
It's a modern day.
it's a modern day pyramid, but who knows, right?
Right? That's cool. What wow. Yeah, that's the thing and then I mean you get into the Cumberland Ridge area and of course there's all these stories about the pygmies, the pygmy graves. There's thousands of them over that way. Um, the moon-eyed people. I mean, there's so many different uh, things, and I've actually done more research recently on the moon-eyed people. Uh, did not realize how extensive that is in Appalachian lore until recently. But
And
those
isn't
are
it always like the same reoccurring story? Like even today, you get encounters, and you're like, "This is the exact description of what some dude said 300 years ago." You know,
yeah,
some poor German moved up here in the mountains of Appalachian and got his light scared out of him.
exactly, exactly. So it's very interesting. I find a lot of the phenomena that are happening in these areas, it's beyond what I would consider coincidence at this point. And at one time, I may have said, "Oh, it's just it's kind of coincidental that these people are having these experiences over this vast area. Maybe it's mass hysteria, maybe there's whatever. There's lots of reasons that you can give for why a large group of people over a large area would be having some of these experiences. But the fact that there's so much, um, again, when it comes to the cryptids, when it comes to uh, the amount of UAPs being seen, yeah, the drones are a thing. We get that. People play with drones all the time. I've experienced seeing some drone activity around here. Um, it's just there comes a point though where you have to ask yourself, especially in an area like honestly, I forget exactly how many different types of moonstone alone is found in between Central and East Tennessee, but it's several different types. Um, some of them actually rather rare. So I find that very interesting that we live in an area that produces a lot of the minerals that it produces, a lot of the uh, energy that it produces as well. But with all that said, it feels to me like, and I realize that there's also the vast history associated with not only with the indigenous people, but with the Civil War era and so forth. I mean, right down the street from me, there was a battleground. There still is a battleground, as a matter of fact. So it's
Part of our
not
property as well. Huh?
right, right.
Like there's some it's old washout area, but it's also like trenched, but it's grown up, and it's almost reminiscent of like I mean I was in the service for a little while and got to go do some training exercises in some old World War II trenches in Poland. They dug these trenches out and literally like you know almost a century ago, and then on our property there's some old dugout areas you can go through, and we know that they use this as a staging ground, training ground. We're fairly certain there were skirmishes up and down this waterway here. I have, they talk about you go out to Gettysburg and you get the feeling, right? There's all kinds of stories, right? Well,
There's like around what's the term for it? They did training here on grounds around Lebanon. They said they
right, because we have the Castle Heights. Like you have the history. You have the history in Lebanon. Lebanon's been around before. I can't even remember the original name for the town. But I mean, I've been back there, and I was standing up on a risen part near these dugout trenches, and I all of a sudden got the feeling like I was going to get shot. Like I felt like somebody was like, I felt exposed. I felt like and then I swear it just felt like someone was like, hey dude, you're exposing yourself. But also that could just be, residual feeling. But I just think it's interesting because you have these stories where you go out to Gettysburg where, people have their experiences out in the woods with soldiers. And my buddy wanted to go out there and play the Reveille on top of a hill. I said, you go try that. you go have fun with that. But it's I think it's all fun and games talking about it and getting like the reports and stuff. What really actually I think gets a little dangerous is when you really just take on like, okay, these things are real, right? And then so what does that mean? Well, if they are real, then they've been here all along. They've probably been here before us, liable to be here after us. The real cryptids are the ones who already know about them, right? Like dudes who show up anytime there is a real encounter and, who clean up the scene and clean up the media and keep everything out of the official narratives,
Did you tell them about Mr. Garrett?
The large, I mean, Joe Rogan has already helped expose large scandals with the Smithsonian. They've shown where they dumped tons of bones off in the river. And apparently those were just bones that they wanted to get rid of, but they weren't worried about being found, right? Now, if you have something that completely defies all narratives and just by admitting the existence of said thing, you will defy the cultural norms. Where do those remains go? Where do they go? What facilities do they ship off to? I think we only heard about Area 51 because they already built 3 more. You know what I mean? It's like, and then you hear stories and you get into files where the CIA studies remote viewing, and then you get into credible stories of remote viewers who see things on the moon, who see things here and there, and Lord forbid you try it yourself, you might just lose your mind, So, but
there's been a lot of there were some Civil War skirmishes that right down through.
We have an old war blanket. I still have it. I take it camping. It's an old Army green wool blanket. But it
was found in the house, and it was left over from not from the Civil War, but it was from around. I don't know if it was World War II. I'd have to look it up, the history on it.
I think I remember y'all saying it was a Civil War blanket, and I mean, you want to talk about the residual. You want to talk about like energy. Our house is built on stones that were laid over 200 years ago. You know what I mean?
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
said that like when they bought this place in the 1950s, that they knew that they had training exercises here, and just as well as they did, they had them camping out at Cumberland. And I don't know if that was back around World War II, around at that point. I have to look it up. But they were finding like blankets, and I don't know where it's not a helmet. It was the head protector y'all wear.
like a head cover.
Yeah. I don't know where that went, but it was around here for a long time.
It's probably around here still somewhere. If we find that, that'd be cool.
But
got a bunch of old relics.
It was from where they left and forgot some of their stuff,
This house is sitting on stones that are over 200 years old, and this house was a Mason house. It was built by the Masons. And you walk upstairs and look at the construction. You look at the construction of the house. It's plain as day. And I found old books with handwriting where you could tell that they didn't really have schooling back in the day. So mama sat down with the kids and they read a book and taught them English. Like there's literal like scribbles, and I don't know how old these books are,
Wow.
but there's old cursive where you could see they were teaching the kids how to read and how to write and what this meant, that meant. Yeah, it was really, we have them in here.
Let me verify that as far as it's an old two-story farmhouse, definitely. I mean, it's not a big elaborate house or anything like that. But Dr. Sanders, the doctor that owns the property, actually used this smaller house that he built for his like little clinic or something here in the area. I found out, but Dr. Sanders was a Mason, okay, at that time. So they had Masonic meetings here, you know.
Wow. That's scary in itself.
And there's other houses that we know nearby that you drive by. You can almost pick them out. Once you kind of know the construction and how they built, it's like you can pick that one out. It's like, oh, that's a Mason house. I bet they had meetings there. Ain't no telling.
Well, they had meetings in a lot of places. I mean, Dr. Sanders was a Mason at the time, and a lot of the men and a lot of the women in the community were Masonic, at those times. So
yeah, it's a bit different nowadays.
Wow.
So sorry, go ahead.
That in itself is scary to me. Sorry.
There is some residual energy in this house. There is I swear we have a demon in the house, and I could go into that. I do. I swear up and down we have just from what I've felt and energies and emotions I get when I go into a certain room. I don't know what it is. Mom has told me what it is. I don't want to necessarily. No, I don't necessarily want to.
Just because personally, I don't think he's a demon.
Okay.
He's a nature element. Okay.
It's probably Reginald who's been popping up in our dreams.
He is. It's not demonic.
That's not the what I'm talking about.
For explaining that, I've watched him and studied him enough that he's a nature elemental, but your nature elementals can really stir up a whole lot of chaos. Okay. And to the point that there are times that you will think, God, I got demonic activity in the house, because they can stir up a lot.
Wow.
So my question,
but there is a difference in a nature elemental spirit and a demon. Okay.
My question ultimately comes to, at the end of the day, when you have credible evidence or lack thereof, but the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, right? Where do you go with it all? You can do so many shows on TV where you're hunting for Bigfoot. You can do so many coverages and take so many stories, but at the end of the day, like where's it all going to lead? Are they going to walk among us? What would it take for them to walk among us? We probably wouldn't be able to live like we live, But,
I think we're just in a big vortex, and we're all walking around in the same fishbowl.
What if they do start walking among us? I don't know, dude.
Yeah. I think that's, again, as you say, at the end of the day, the take home is what it's all about. Are we learning anything from this? Is it an experience that we're going to gain from all the different questions that come along with the things that we turn up and the things that we experience? is there
What would
something
there be to learn from it, you know?
right, right. And I think those are all things that, on a baseline level, I think it's good for us to ask. I think it's good for us to contemplate it. Um, do I have an answer? Absolutely not. And one thing that I do know is with research and investigation that learning the things that I have learned so far, which is not a lot, but the things that I have learned so far, they it does bring growth. It does bring understanding. It brings awareness, into my life. So I feel like, for me at least, at the end of the day, it helps me to expand a little bit more of my reality, my understanding of things. Eh, Is there a huge take home to, am I going to make my ascension in this lifetime based on everything that I learn about this? Probably not. But
Well,
is there value? Yeah, there's value.
absolutely. I think I'm sort of the mindset that, again, not to get sacrilegious and heretical, but I'm of the mindset that, like, heaven and hell can really be the metaphor for your state of consciousness, for your state of mind. That's where you learn about, mental alchemy and, getting into stoicism and psychology and whatnot. But I think realizing ultimately that you're as much a part of what's around you as what's around you is a part of you. You're not separate from the universe walking around. We observe. It all depends on the lens we take. Kind of touching on what I was saying earlier. If you get so desensitized and you maintain certain ideals and you maintain certain mental locks, then I would say, like, what the thing to learn is that, like, there is more here than just us, than just you, than just what you're doing. You're driving to work every day and there's things crawling under the bridges, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that is the take home, is just having a holistic viewpoint. You start to realize, you start to feel again, you start to realize that, again, we're all in one universe. Not to get too hippy dippy about it, but there is some grand design to it. There is some grand consciousness, something that has been here before us and will be here after us. And so I think it's to deny anything is to just pretty much bastardize everything, because if you get lost in the forest for the trees, we get so stuck on trying to find the answer. Well, what happens when you find an answer? You just get more questions, right? So you're looking for more answers. You kind of
Right.
get lost in the chase rather than being able to just step back, take a holistic view and look at everything and say, yeah, you know, coexist. You know what I mean? There is
Right.
so there's such a wealth of knowledge to be gained, and to just you know, demean anything, it just sacrifices the knowledge that could be gained.
Right. And I feel like, when it comes to, you know, what we choose to do with the things that we learn along the way, I think, using our free agency to make mindful decisions based on what we learn, and developing um, I guess, a bit of higher understanding along the way. I think it's very valuable for the soul in a lot of ways. I think, when it comes down to it, you know, what does if I discover tomorrow, you know, that yes, I understand, cryptids or whatever. If I understand their existence, if I understand what or who they are. You know, how am I going to apply that? And how am I going to learn from that? And what am I going to do, you know, to invite their energy into my life? You know, so I think, yeah, I think there's a tendency for us in the long run to, I mean, we're curious beings. We want to know. If we weren't curious, we wouldn't have penicillin. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that have come from our curiosity. Uh, and I don't think it's a bad thing to explore these unknowns. I think it would be more detrimental to just ignore them in the long run. And I think that's one of the things that, for me, as an investigator and a researcher, I mean, at the end of the day, acknowledging them and giving them value is important in a big way, uh, rather than just kind of ignoring them and discrediting them altogether. Case in point, this past week has been all about the controversy surrounding one element of, the Bigfoot phenomena. And everybody has had just an explosive amount of energy related to this one element of, you know, well, this thing is fake. So what does it mean for, the general community, the general idea of, the Sasquatch? If this one element that people have put so much energy on all these years turns out to be not true or to be fake, what does that mean?
Mm.
And we've seen this just immense, like, tidal wave of just content after content and post after post throughout the social media, all week long, literally all week long, over this one item. And at the end of the day, I guess it's what I really want to say is it's good to be cautious, to a point, when it comes to, how much validity we give and how much importance we give to one aspect or one piece of quote unquote evidence or whatever. But we have to understand that is only a piece of the puzzle, and whether it's a piece of the puzzle that's going to fit correctly or not, it should not be breaking the whole system. It should not be breaking the whole picture. And I think that's one of the things that especially this week, I've definitely been more focused on is, not putting all my eggs in one basket, so to say, when it comes to, a piece of evidence or a note in the music there. You can't say, oh, this is the zenith, this is the big kahuna in the middle of all of this, and you discredit all the things around it as being lesser, because inevitably, if it turns out that that one big piece of evidence that you thought you had is not what it appears to be, you know, is it going to unravel everything? Is it going to really make you doubt to the point of losing your faith in what you once believed in? If so, what does that say? So I don't know. I think it's very important for us uh, to acknowledge again and to understand the world that we live in a little bit more. When it comes to this area, when it comes to the stuff going on in this area, high strangeness of this area. And I think it's very important for us to be able to learn how to tap into that, the wealth of that energy, in a way to benefit our lives.
I think the best metaphor I have for it is I made a sandwich the other day and I knocked some crumbs off the floor. I believe it was my grandmother, and she said, "What are you knocking crumbs on the floor for?" I said, "Well, other things live here too, you know." So it's like, I got a little house mouse. His name is Squeakleys. He lives in my room. He's a little scamper. He gets around, but he lives here too, and I'm not threatened by him. And used to be scared of insects, and saw a spider, I'd be out of the room, in a split. But you, I think, more to my point about you getting lost in the chase and looking for that one piece of evidence. You're more so just building a conscious awareness, right? And a lot of times when you do come to the conclusion, it's almost like you get the feeling of you're just remembering it. Maybe you've studied it so much that you know what it should be, and then when you finally reach the conclusion, that's what it is, right? But it's when you don't block yourself, right? When you
Mhm.
I have the habit of overthinking everything. I'm trying to build a chicken coop, and it is the hardest thing I've ever done with myself, because I can't get past myself to figure out what to do. And then I finally figure out what to do, and I stub my toe, or I build it the wrong way. So the frustration arises, and you kind of just want to throw it down and say hooey with the whole thing. But I think that's where people lose the picture. And I think that's why people don't have those experiences. People don't open themselves up. They have a preconceived notion. They're like, well, if I did have the experience, it would have to be this. And supernatural made me scared of going to walk in the park, to be honest, sometimes, as a little kid, watching Jurassic Park, I thought some raptors were going to jump out. Right. And they might be out there. You never know. But again, it really is just taking it like it's a magical journey. You know, every little piece of evidence is just really just it's alluding to something that is real, that is there. And people, we get on such a linear mindset because we go to
Mhm.
school. And you finish first grade to finish second grade, and then you can do third grade. And we get on these life paths where it's you do this to do that, but reality isn't a line. It's not linear. We're not two-dimensional. It's three-dimensional. It's a spectrum. It's all around us, and there's things on 4 dimensions and 5 dimensions and things that we can't even comprehend, but you could if you just allowed yourself. But it really is, it's really like the magical journey is to the battle with your mind and all the mind control, all the do's and don'ts. Don't believe that, you're crazy, all the scorn and ostracization. And let me get my thesaurus out real quick. So, but again, yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I think you do a great service to the endeavor, to the journey, to the community, because you provide an objective viewpoint. You're professional, and you actually bring like real stuff to the table. I do appreciate the bio,
Thank
by the
you.
way.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my goal. That's part of what I do and what I'm here for. Uh, Continuing the learning process, continuing the growing process, and sharing what there is to share at this point. I appreciate you being on tonight. As we round out the show, what is piece? What is the thing that you would like to leave us with tonight?
Just to sum it up, it really is a battle of the mind. In any endeavor, just waking up, getting through your day, just figuring out what you're going to do, who you're going to be. maybe who you're going to be, who you want to be, doesn't exactly align with who you are, and that's okay. I think it's important to remember that we're a creature with a soul, a mind, and a body, and when you start to reconnect with that, again, just desensitize yourself, become sensitive. You will start to have encounters, experiences. You'll see things that you won't be able to explain, and then that'll scare you again, and you'll want to shell up and go on your, you know what I mean? And then you'll be like, I saw one 30 years ago. I never went to the woods again. But it's at the end of the day, it's all about, keeping an open mind and trying to wake up, every day, just healing, just going out, having new experiences. I feel like when you stop learning, that's when you die. You have two deaths in your life. You stop learning, and then you actually die. We've all met the one person who's just stuck in their mindset, and they're not open to any new evidence, nothing. So I guess that's what I'd leave with.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your thoughts, some of your experiences, and just giving more testimony to this crazy space that we live in. Zone 1, which is what part of the area that I call Zone 1 is where we're living at, is definitely part of an incredible magical journey. And sharing that experience, sharing those experiences of this area with people, hopefully they will take away some learning, something that will be of value to them, and give them an opportunity to possibly find things to explore within this area. I encourage you guys to this week spend some time thinking about our world around us and the beauty of the mysticism that surrounds us, and always, always, may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our past.